Good afternoon. I'm Bob Giberson, joined by Ross Halkett, and we're going to talk this afternoon about international automation and how it affects the future of distribution fulfillment. Today's presentation is going to be a little different in that it's a live discussion. So we ask that you add some questions as we go along. We've already had a few questions entered, so we'll save those for the end. But as we're having a discussion, if you have questions, please type them into the GoToMeeting area, on the screen, and we'll answer them as close to in real time as possible. So without any further ado, I'll just introduce myself, and then we'll let Ross Halkett introduce himself as well. Bob Giberson, I'm the principal of PeakLogix. We're a integrator of material handling systems headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We do projects all over the country, and we're celebrating our 30th year in business. We have a full engineering and project management staff and have executed projects from vertical carousel systems to full shuttle goods to man systems and robotics applications as well. So that's who we are and the projects that we've completed in the past 29 years. Ross?
Thanks, Bob. My name is Ross Halkett. I am the VP of Intralogistics Sales for WRH Global Americas, better known globally as Fairag. I've been in the business for 40 years, materials handling, and in automation for the last 30. And really appreciate Bob bringing this educational program to the forefront here. And I think we'll have a good discussion today. Thanks, Bob.
Well, excellent. We're going to talk about first, off the bat, maybe a little historical perspective and what the global marketplace is looking like right now for automation solutions in distribution. So, Ross, why don't you talk through some of what you've seen and what is being presented as solutions today.
Sure. I think first let's start with the problem. When I started in this business, everything was moving pallets or moving cases, a little bit of each picking. And now you can see from these videos in the center and the chaos all around it, this is what's happening on Black Friday or special e-commerce days around the world. Totally uncontrolled chaos. And what we're here today to talk about is to help you put that in perspective and how can you address these needs. So what's changed is basically the World Wide Web. We all have access to our phones, to our computers, and we like things we see and we order them online. And as humans, we expect them tomorrow or even this afternoon. And we expect to get what we ordered quickly. So I think us as human beings, we're driving the need for the automation in these warehouses. Basically, what the e-commerce companies have learned is that people will keep shopping at my website if I give them all the choices and if I can be a one-stop shop for them. So these guys are coming, and if in the old days we used to say they'll just order one piece, one line, and that will be it. Early e-commerce centers were designed around that. The more SKUs you offer, the more loyalty you get, and now all of a sudden the average order is 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces from one website. So that creates huge problems in when you used to just worry about 30,000 SKUs in your retail store. Now you're trying to attract more people, and the big guys, they're talking 1 million, 2 million SKUs in their warehouse. So not only do I have to find a storage location for that, but I also have to get access to it. I have to have the right quantity on hand So my days on hand requirement inside my warehouse has dramatically changed over the years to get to where we are today. So I don't want to say that the only warehouse problems are e-commerce problems, but what I would like to say is that e-commerce has driven this huge innovation binge that we're on right now. Everybody's trying to get the Holy Grail. We're all trying to get lights out warehouses with every piece to every pack out station easily accessible within minutes. That's where we're going today. So typically or traditionally, in my mind, in my history, the innovations were coming out of Europe. What's happened in the last 10 years is now the e-commerce need around the world has driven local or other countries to grab onto that innovation. In other words, the U.S. is leading in a lot of ways in innovative technologies. Asia is also leading. So we're seeing this, these once European-driven competence centers are now global competence centers.
Interesting. What are some of the concerns that you see in, taking your current operation and processes and, converting to, a higher level of automation? What have experientially, what have you seen?
So yes, there is risk, and if it's calculated correctly and everybody does their job, then you can have great successes with these automated warehouses. Change is very painful for everybody, so change management is key. You have to be aware of what's coming. You have to prime your entire staff, your ops staff, your shipping staff, everybody to work in harmony to ensure this thing works. I think we were talking earlier, Bob, that in a typical warehouse you may have X amount of mechatronic technicians. That's all fine and dandy with a standard conveyor sorter solution warehouse. Nowadays, with all the technical and complex aspects of a warehouse, you have to have a different caliber of technician and a different caliber of operations management to leverage the data you're going to collect to ensure that you can keep optimizing your system. So there's been a lot of people talking about, well, I can't afford this, or how can I afford this? And an industry guru, well, I won't mention his name without asking him first, but he mentioned last September at a big seminar we are at, it was adapt or die. In other words, there will be a return on investment, but the return on investment to get your million SKUs out or your million units a day out the door, that's a whole different breed of animal that's not going to come in a 1-year return on investment or a 3-year return on investment. You have to be in this for the long haul. You have to understand that if you go on the status quo, you may not be around in 3 years. If you change, it's best to have a payback in 4, 5, 6 years or even longer to keep your company afloat.
It's really, really interesting. Adapt or die.
Yeah, pretty blunt.
Yes. As you think about automation, and I know, when we got into the industry back when we were kids, there was, horizontal carousels and narrow aisle, unit load cranes. But can you talk a little bit about some of the automated systems that are most prevalent, leading edge and, bordering on bleeding edge that you're seeing today, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Let's talk first of all about these designs, these systems are data-driven, and there's many different ways to look at it. I think you'll see that the successful systems have all followed the same kind of pattern. So first, I need to know how much storage I require, and I need to know how fast I can get it in and how fast I can get it out. So your storage area could be large and expansive and very slow to get products out, or it could be small and requires a very fast velocity of getting products through your system. Could we go to the next slide there? Okay. There we go. So just to show you some of the different systems that are out there, they all are promising. Or how can I say this? So a few years ago, the big thing was goods to person, which was a great revolution. It was fantastic. Instead of people walking up and down hallways and looking for the slow movers, which were furthest away, and a very big drain on performance, and your employees' footwear was hard and strenuous to get a lot of orders out of the building. Goods to person came along. Companies like with Carousel goods to person and Shuttle goods to person, they allowed you to stand in one place. The software optimized the bringing of the SKUs to you in the right sequence at the right time and allowed you to get a high performance out of your goods to person system. Mick Mounts, the founder of Kiva, did a great job of selling Kiva. I'll never forget his TED Talks. He was talking not about Kiva robots, but about goods to person, and that's what he sold. And those of us who were in the business of making goods to person solutions were kind of dumbfounded, but wow, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to market, and you saw what happened with Kiva. They initially took off and took the world by storm. So different things have driven the best way to get products in and out of your building. And in the goods to person area, we're talking about a storage engine. And I'm not sure if we have that slide on storage engines.
That's right. You know, one of the things that strikes me when you look at all these slides and all these different solutions that we see at Modex or Promat or in Europe, it's that's the storage engine, but that's only part of the story. And if you could talk a little bit more about what makes it really work, I think that would be interesting.
Okay, if we hit a few of the key points on why automation, I think in Europe you saw automation come early because of social issues, labor, safety requirements, to not put people in harm's way and to kind of tell people that we didn't want you to pick outside of the golden zone. We don't want you to be straining your ankles every day. So that drove in Europe this kind of need for automation. It's taken over the world because, quite frankly, it's hard to find people who want to work in a warehouse and pick at night, for example, on an off shift for a low wage. So everybody is scrambling to try and get the same labor pool in the same cities that are logistically fantastic spots to be, but when you're all fighting for the same labor pool, for example, Louisville, Kentucky, Amazon has, I think, 8 or 9 DCs, all requiring at peak, 5,000 to 6,000 people. And then what do the other companies do that are there that have big warehouses? You either have to move out of Louisville or go somewhere else, or do something else. So the lack of labor availability is driving the need for automation. Again, looking at what you're seeing on the screen here, you've got the old style automation from the old days, still around today, works very well. Stacker cranes for pallets, mini load cranes for totes and cases, all work very well. Sorry, Bob, did you have a question?
The just looking at those, like you said, those have been around a long time. I think if and there's been variations on these themes. Some are enclosed, and maybe on the next slide we show some of the variations. To the left there, vertical lift modules, which are great for using the vertical cube and slower moving. I think you actually have some general metrics on cycle throughput on some of these technologies.
Yeah, so it's important to note that you have many different technologies to choose from, and so if you break it down into two main components, the storage requirement, the days on hand you want, the number of SKUs you want to have access to, and the velocity, again, of how you get these out of here. If you look at the top left there, you'll see a vertical lift module. So typically that can bring down 80 trays an hour or 80 totes an hour to give the person picking from there access to 80 units an hour, roughly. I mean, they can peak higher than that, but 80 is a good average to talk about. The mini loads that you'll see below that, or in Europe they call them AKLs, but mini load cranes, they now can store a lot more because my aisles can be longer. I can go taller. I can go up to 22 meters, so 65, 70 feet. And my crane can now bring, let's say, 110, 120, maybe 130 totes out and put the same amount back every hour. So you've increased your velocity, you've increased your storage density or your storage availability by going to a mini load. On the top right, you'll see the next innovation was carousel clusters, ASRS carousels. In other words, they use an extractor to get the totes out. So if a cluster is 4, each 50 double cycles, then I can get 1,000 totes in and out of a carousel solution. Ultimate came along a few years ago, which was the shuttle, the single level shuttle. There's several variations on that, but the single level shuttle allowed you to get now, let's say, 500, 600 totes per aisle out of a mini load system. So now you can see we're talking about different storage densities and different velocities, and you have this kind of palette to choose from. And you would choose that based on your data. So until recently, this would be the ultimate. So you would have a pick station in front of these storage engines, and you would pick from the donor tote or the SKU tote into an outbound carton or an outbound tote. Your tote would travel down to the shipping area. None of this is fast enough for the e-commerce holy grail of 1 million units a day, 1 million SKUs in my facility. So these storage engines now become just that. That's what they're there for, and the velocity will allow me now of the higher performing things will allow me to now get the amount of SKUs out that I need and distributed to the right sortation platforms.
As we move to the next slide, I think we're looking here at a video from TGW. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is just to show a typical single level shuttle. So these little robots in the aisles travel back and forth in each aisle, in this case, and at a high rate of speed, bring the totes out to the front. And via a lift on the front, the totes are taken down to a workstation.
Throughput, Ross, I mean, what can be achieved with a system like this?
I think reality is about 450 to 500 double cycles an hour per aisle. And an aisle is multiple shuttles with with the lifts on the front.
Got it.
So now the problem becomes when you have this, what happens at high velocity if I need to get product from aisle 8 to the pack-out station that's near aisle 1? So if you wanted to cross over all these lanes, excuse me, pardon me, I'm coming through, there'd be a lot of stop and starts. So there's various ways different companies have attacked this. They put conveyors at different levels along the front of the lifts. So maybe I only have to go down 2 levels before I deposit my tote out to another conveyor that takes it down to aisle 1. Other companies are doing it by having roaming shuttles. So they come to the front or they cross across the aisles. So they actually take the tote to the aisle where that product is needed. Other companies, so they're calling this matrix, where I'm using X, Y, and Z axis to get the right piece to the right workstation at the right time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
With this type of equipment, previously we were, and still are, doing a lot of discrete picking. In other words, I'm sending a tote to a workstation. That tote will be the final order. It'll go out the door as is with all the products in it. So it comes to my goods to person workstation. I put 2 pieces in it. It goes to the next workstation. That guy puts 1 in it. And that's worked just fine. For discrete orders, there's many, many times today where you still need to pick discreetly. However, an untapped benefit of this is I can now batch pick if my software allows me to do that. So if I know in advance 2 hours, 4 hours of orders, I can create batches. And then when this shuttle brings me my tote, instead of picking 1 out, I can now pick 15 out and batch pick from that tote. So I get a much higher efficiency in my pick. I utilize my storage tote to its fullest, pick it clean, and bring me out another one that's got Apple iPhone 8s in it or whatever the number.
Russ, I had a question. When you talk about discrete order picking versus batch, in a high-speed distribution center, are you more efficient because there's less touches? I mean, how does I know all things aren't always equal, but could you talk about that a little bit? Because I know that's the name of the.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's that's what it's all about. It's about less touches, trying to get less movements of your equipment. So if I can bring 500 totes out an hour and I deplete every single one of them, that's been great efficiency. If I only bring 1 piece out of each tote and I have to send it back into the system, now you see my automation is creating a ton of movements, a ton of wear and tear. That's not good for the system. So I think in my mind, batch picking is definitely more efficient, not just because of less touches, but primarily because of less touches.
Yeah, got it. What do we have on the next slide? I think we show a graph. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, that was just where.
What you were talking about. Right.
I'm a little bit behind, but there's different nomenclature, different ways to talk about this stuff. Discrete picking, zone picking, wave picking, batch picking. When I'm talking about batch picking, I'm talking about being able to access the SKU in the least amount of times possible to complete a wave or a batch of orders. So just again, we'll touch on it. If discrete pick, I had 100 orders and each order needed 1 iPhone 7, for example. Then if I was discrete picking, I would bring or have to access that pick face 100 times.
Right.
Whereas if I had 100 iPhones in a tote, I could bring it out once and stand there and just deplete it much quicker into get it into the orders. This is all depending on what comes next down the line after the storage engine and the actual pick. So you have to have all the right technologies working in harmony to make sure you get the best performance out of your entire system.
It's great. A discussion about distribution automation, I don't think would be complete without talking about, something that we hear about almost every day from clients, and is autonomous vehicles, and that thought process, how it mirrors the discussions about autonomous vehicles out on the highway, which would be awesome. I'd get so much work done. But so can we talk a little bit about that in distribution? Some of the the latest as to what's evolving.
Sure. I mean, the goal would be, for example, free roaming robots that are actually picking. That's one way or one type of innovation that's come out these days. These robots are actually going down the aisle and doing exactly what a human would do. They're picking off a shelf one bottle of shampoo, and they're putting it in the tote and traveling along. There's a typical one there. I think that's IM Robotics at one of my previous customers' sites. They all have their limitations, but everybody is so desperate that they're all diving into these things to make sure that once this technology, to be part of the evolution of the technology. So a lot of the early adopters are in here because they don't want to have to learn these lessons in 5 years from now and have to learn it in 6 months before the next peak. They want to understand how all these robots work. So these are typical robots. This one from IM Robotics actually goes to the pick face and picks. I think we have another one
right
from Locus that shows the robots just going to the aisle and beeping and telling the person, hey, come here, I have a pick, and it's in this location, and please pick that piece and put it in here and confirm you picked it. And that's another way of overcoming the lack of labor that's not available to work in warehouses these days.
I think another advantage there too that might be obvious is you don't have to install a huge infrastructure of fixed material handling equipment. It looks like storage systems with open aisles, and the LGVs are mapped to the system. So
yep, they can just work out. That one from IM Robotics, for example, it's working inside an existing warehouse shelf setup where he's just going up and down the aisles and picking. I think in that case, I'm not sure, but I think it was slow movers and dropping them in the totes. Great stuff. This customer is learning lots about robots and how to leverage the equipment they've got, as an example.
Very good. What haven't we talked about?
What I wanted to get to, Bob, was let's go from we now have these storage engines that used to be goods to person and still are and can be, but if we focus on them as a storage engine, typically if you look at high velocity warehouses, what they do is they'll go and they'll batch pick into a tote. That's one person picking. Then they take that tote and they induct it somewhere else onto a sorter. That's another touch. Then those individual units that are sitting in a tray go to a put wall, and somebody from that
Exactly.
location, takes it out of the tray, puts it in footwall, and someone on the other side now picks and packages that. So you've got basically 4 touches. My company today is leading the pack in I believe in pouch sorters, which allow you basically to pick directly from your storage engine and put it into a pouch, which in effect is the put wall. So if I'm in a distribution center right now that's doing 1 million units a day, I'm typically going to have 4 touches, so 4 million touches to get that 1 million units out. When you introduce this type of a sorter, I'm eliminating 2 touches. So I've eliminated 2 million touches a day, which is significant in FTEs, cost, overheads, etc., of all those people. And of course, I've cut the number of people significantly from what I would need. What you're looking at here is a representation of one of the ways that we can address this. So we would automatically load a pouch. You can do this several ways. One way would be to singulate your products and have a conveyor drop them directly into the pouch. We feed up into the pouch. We carry it through a series of sorts. And those sorts allow me to get every piece to the right place at the right time and in the right sequence. So if I have a ream of paper and a bag of cookies, I want the ream of paper to go in the box first and then the bag of cookies, and that's how these pouch sorters can bring it to you. Unique to my company, FairAg, is we can carry more, so we can carry 10 kilograms in a pouch. We can carry larger objects than most other companies can do, and we have this automatic unloading station that you're looking at now, which is unique to FairAg. So I can automatically unload these pouches with whatever units I'm working with, and they can slide down in the right pack out sequence to my packer, who's going to put these things into a carton. In certain industries where the presentation of the outbound carton or tote is not that critical, you can actually dump those products directly into a carton or a tote, and now I'm finished. So apart from the picking at the storage engine into a pouch, I'm not using any labor to get, in that scenario, everything out the door. I think what you're looking at now, if it's moving, is it's just some real life examples of the different types of SKUs that we can fit into a pouch. There's a little bit of jitteriness or jerkiness on the video, but I think you get the picture. You can handle all kinds of SKUs in all kinds of sizes, and the weights and the sizes and the unloading station are unique to FairAg. So I'm very pleased to be part of a company that's got this advanced innovation. Definitely helps out. I'm thinking if we can maybe skip the next slide and go to stage storage. You can see a real life example.
Yeah, this is an installation here in the U.S., and I think it's interesting to see how what might have been considered bleeding edge is really already affecting automation and operations, and that the U.S. is adopting some of these global solutions very quickly.
Yeah, I think we're actually taking the guys out in Seattle kind of set the threshold. Is 1 million units a day enough? Is 2 million the right number? What performance can I get out of my my facility, those huge systems were U.S. driven. So even though a lot of this technology comes from Europe or elsewhere in the world, it definitely is being driven by the massive and quantities of units our companies in the U.S. want to get out the door.
Exactly.
So what we've shown you so far is automatic loading and automatic unloading. I want to show you a real example on the next slide, please. There we go. So this was done by one of our partners, SDI. We basically fulfilled the mechanics and the electrics, and SDI did the software and put this system together for the customer. It's a very, very, very happy customer, but please feel free to get in touch with me and I'll put you in contact with them. So what they're doing here is they're batch picking the Gaylords, home goods, clothes, and they are scanning them and putting them manually into pouches. And when they come to the pack out stations, they are manually retrieved from the pouch. Just to let you know, there's a way of doing this without having to go all out with the fully automated solution. If you can find people to work for you, then this is definitely a good solution for many retail and e-com customers. And yeah, Bob, just to touch base there, I believe, someone may want to correct me, but I believe there's 3 pouch sorters in North America. We have one, this one, SDI. We also, other people have some in retail and e-commerce out west and up in Canada doing cosmetics. But the train is rolling and it's rolling fast. We already have some beta sites at some very big customers in the U.S. and we have sold several more of these systems into North America. My company not only uses this for pouch sortation, by the way, we also use it for any kind of a buffer in between production machines and packaging, for example. Use of gravity, use of the vertical space is something a lot of people don't think about, but it's an easy way to leverage your existing space to take care of some of your buffering problems, in addition to pouch sortation.
Interesting.
So it's a very interesting system, and if anybody has some has any questions, please contact Bob or myself about it, and we'll be able to tell you some more.
It's really good. I think at this point we're just going to look at a couple other examples of technology that's being implemented today, and as we go through, maybe Ross, you can just talk to it a little bit.
Sure. This is a real life example from I think it was last year of in this case, a right hand robotics robot arm picking out of a tote and putting into a pouch. So these are cobots. They're designed to work with and around people. And I think this is going to be the next phase of all of this. These are in place now. As of, I think, last year, these kind of robots are actually working hard and well at customers, proving their worth. So in this case, it's putting them into pouches. You can also put them onto some of the new e-commerce trends are in the small tray box. I think one of them is called a T-bot. I'm not exactly sure, but there's different media or different technologies they use to carry the products away to the right destination. So I think cobots and robots are going to become a huge piece of your future. Yes. And you need to invest in at least looking at it or talking to the people who are using it and the people who are offering it now to get ahead of the curve.
I think that's an interesting point too. These are not just lab demonstrations. These are live customers, getting benefit from these technologies today.
Exactly.
Yep.
And again, it's the same reasons. You wrap it back to unavailable labor, and therefore I need something that I can rely on that doesn't take bathroom breaks or vacations, and keeps working 24/7.
Shows up every day. Yep.
Yeah. This you're looking at is another example of what the cobots can do, picking from a tote, putting them on one of these little sorter robots, and it takes it off to the right chute and drops it in the right place.
Right.
So definitely definitely something to consider, and I think in my mind these will be commonplace in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I think the combination of a goods-to-person storage engine, in my case, followed by a robot putting into a pouch, followed by an automatic pack-out, which is also possible, basically lights out warehouses that can drive many thousands of units an hour out the door.
Right. Kind of reverts back to your acronym SALT, which is the storage, the accuracy, labor, and throughput.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are the. Sorry, Bob. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, those are the four. If you need to want to leverage any of these, storage is one place to look to automation. At higher density, I can get more SKUs in a given space. The second part of the SALT acronym is accuracy. And if you've ever had to deal with returns, you know what it costs you to return that piece into your building. Automation can definitely improve your accuracy. 99.99, close to 6 Sigma is commonplace in when you're utilizing automation. The labor aspect we've talked about, that's the L in SALT. The labor aspect is either unavailable or I want to use less labor for many reasons. That's another place that automation can definitely help you and get you across the finish line. And throughput, what can I do with now I have this big massive engine, what can I do to with that throughput? Can I increase the order cutoff times for my customer, for example, from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. because now I can get it out the door faster. So if you have any of the SALT issues, even one, it's time to start thinking about automation. If you have 2, you should be investing in it. If you have 4, you definitely, all 4 of the SALT aspects, you definitely need to be to have automation and get it in your warehouses right now.
Very good. I think that is the last slide. We did have a couple of questions, and I'm looking at them. So Ross, one of the questions was, as you look at the different automation, the major groupings of automation, whether it's a shuttle system or a the Farrig system, if you could break down what's the timeline, with as you said early, many of the manufacturers are stressed right now because of the demand, but what kind of timelines are you seeing from start to finish?
Definitely. I mean, a great question. So what used to be a year, and in certain cases still is, from start to finish, from order to go live, for a goods-to-person solution, for example, which requires a lot of software interface discussions. That's gone from a year to 14, 16 months. Large systems are out there beyond 2 years. Every manufacturer I know, they can't keep up with expanding their manufacturing space. This is automation has become a hot commodity, and therefore, if you're thinking now about putting something in next year, you better think again. It's not going to happen. You better start now and plan for somewhere between 15 and 18 months at a minimum to get a completed system delivered and installed. Certain components can be delivered much quicker. I think the biggest issue is software and controls and access to the amount of talent required by these OEMs to get things done. It's just not there. There's not enough talented PLC and software engineers out there to make it happen. So yeah, please think now for 2020, even 2021.
Interesting. When we look at the presentations, or we go to ProMat or Modex or Hanover Fair, we see these fantastic automation solutions, but I'm sure the road is littered with projects that didn't go well. And I just wondered, with your experience, not that you've had any that haven't gone well, but just, what learnings do you have in terms of, where clients or collaborators, go in the wrong direction?
Yeah, that's another great question, Bob. It's the main driver of systems that don't work as sold, at least initially or within schedule. I would say is a general, either a missed sale by the sales representative or a misunderstanding by the end user client. What I mean there is these systems are very valuable to you. They're complex and they require collaboration. This is a system is not something you put in like a machine and you walk away and the customer turns it on and it runs. You basically have to get married to your vendor and your client and walk through this together, hand in hand. Same goals, skirts up all the time. I think that's been the main thing I've seen is when something has been misrepresented by the sales outlet or misunderstood by the end user.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a real workshopping, collaboration, data scrubbing, almost eliminating different automation solutions to arrive at the optimum solution. And your image of skirts up, that's going to stick with me for a while. But that is true transparency of working together to the same goal. So I think that's excellent. Well, I think with that, I don't see any other question. Let me see here. So I'd just like to thank everyone for attending. Ross, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And as we said, we're going to send this presentation out to everyone that's been with us today. And if there's any questions, please feel free to call us or email us. And we look forward to helping. And a Merry Christmas to all. Happy New Year. And thanks again.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.